Hello, guys, and welcome back to Flow State. We are here with episode 14 today. And look, I think me and Adam are looking pretty extra fresh today. I know for a fact that I'm feeling pretty fantastic after having my rest week, and I've been getting back into some training this week. And I'm not sure if there's like a psychological aspect to that super compensation as opposed to just the physical, but I've felt wonderful this week. And I honestly can say that I've been so psyched to record this podcast off the back of the last one. And of course, we always do a little bit of due diligence at the start of the pod. And me and Adam were just talking off air and saying that we've had a lot of new listeners. We've had a lot of love from the post marathon episode, and I've even so Nicole actually was getting some people from her work were telling her how good that post marathon episode is. People that aren't necessarily like really big into running, and this really does mean the absolute world to us, because obviously we're not making anything from the podcast. We do this out of our love of running and our love of chatting combined. So it means the world to us. And on behalf of myself, Adam, and Flow State, we just want to say thank you to everyone that is tuning in and sending us those like wonderful messages. Really means the world. But look, that's enough of me being soft. I feel like I was a little bit soft last week talking about how I got teary at the end of the podcast, and I think like that's enough of that. So why don't we have a bit of a chat about how our last couple of weeks have gone? Maybe not just running, Adam, but why don't you start? What's been happening, mate? 2 weeks we've got to catch up on, really.
We do. Thanks a million, Luke. Good speaking to you again. And yeah, like you say, got some really nice messages following last week's. We did get a bit emotional at some points, I think, didn't we?
I think we did. I did, for
Emotional,
sure.
spiritual. Uh, we went deep on
Existential, all of it.
we went deep in the fields on our London Ballarat recaps. But I mean, that's marathons change your life. You know, there's a great saying, a great piece of wisdom. If you want to change your life, train for a marathon. And yeah, listen, that's all part of it. And we had great fun in training, racing, and then recapping it after. I actually listened to last week's podcast the day it came out on Wednesday, just gone, and I was just buzzing listening to it. You know, it just gave me so much energy again, listening to both my own recap on London, but also your recap in Ballarat, and just how well those days went. And yeah, those like I said in a couple of Insta posts during the week, memories for life. And just recapping it was cool. So absolutely loved it. And now we come crashing back down to earth, you know, and back to reality, back to washing, back to all that life admin, all the stuff that gets brushed to the side over those couple of weeks that where you're kind of focused in on the running. But yeah, the last couple of weeks has been class, mate. As we were talking about, the weather here has been unbelievable, and we've been really lucky over the last few months. I feel like I've been saying the weather has been good for a while now, which is rare in Ireland. So weather's been great weather for drying your laundry, and just overall helps me feel. I think we're both affected quite heavily by the SADs, and yeah, just the opposite makes me feel the opposite. So it's been a nice couple of weeks. Great way to recover, and get back into some easy running this week. My legs, I wouldn't say my legs are recovered yet. I think I definitely rinsed myself in London, and the heat probably has a big impact on how quickly you recover as well, and just the additional stress of that. And I was just to go off on a little bit of a tangent early, I was actually looking at my heart rate in London. I never raced a heart rate. I've actually very rarely trained a heart rate either. I love feeling based running and just my perception of effort, and we've gone into that before, but I had a quick look at my heart rate trace in the London Marathon, and it was off the wrist-based sensor, which, as we know, is not accurate. It's not a reliable piece of information or data. However, the trace on my Garmin app and Strava looks incredibly accurate in that you can kind of tell from a heart rate trace if it's good data or if it's bad data. You know, if it's jumping around all over the place, it's bad data. If it looks around the right number and it's like a nice kind of linear straight line, you can be pretty much guaranteed that data is good and accurate. And yeah, it looks perfectly accurate for my London Marathon, but my heart rate was well above my threshold for the majority of that race. And again, that could have had a significant impact on recovery. And I sort of did a little bit more digging, a little bit more looking into sort of heart rate response throughout a marathon. Well, kind of I know that anyway. What tends to happen in a good marathon is your heart rate very gradually rises right until the end. And if you get the marathon right by the end of the race, you can actually be running at a really high percentage of your VO2 max because of cardiac drift and so on and fatigue. However, like I said, that heart rate was much, much higher than my lactate threshold. Well, like 10 beats higher than my lactate threshold for pretty much the whole race. And like without heat, that's an impossible intensity to sustain. Physiologically, human beings can't sustain above their lactate threshold for 2.5 hours. But then I was digging deep and looking into it, and the heat has a big factor on that. And because there's energy partitioned towards cooling and just trying to continue functioning properly. So basically, what I wanted to say was, I believe that increased heart rate is going to then require greater amounts of recovery post marathon. And I'm feeling that, you know, my energy's good, my mind's in a good place, but I can definitely still feel the fatigue in the muscle. And the couple of jogs that I've went on this week, I felt like my body wants to go. Like my energy's good and my body wants to run faster. I can feel it. But as soon as I sort of start to jog a little bit faster or run a little bit faster down into the 6 minute mile in or whatever, I can feel the fatigue still very much like in my quads and in my legs. So even though the mind's in a good place, even though the energy's in a good place, it's just going to be a case of listening to that body. And that's where, for me, the feeling-based approach in running is so powerful because it factors into account all of those things. And you're not just looking at a heart rate and thinking, I'm at the right effort, so it's all good. You're kind of thinking about the whole package. And yeah, bit of a tangent there, but really important to note. And
on that point as well, so you've done obviously a handful, you've done lots of racing, but you've done a handful of marathons. Would you say this is pretty atypical in terms of how long it's taken to recover to get rid of that fatigue in the legs, or pretty normal for you?
No, pretty normal. Pretty normal. I believe that people massively, first of all, people underestimate the need for recovery post marathon, but I also think people really don't respect. This is a blanket rule, by the way, a very generalization, but in my experience, I feel like most people don't respect the recovery period post marathon. Because of things that we have talked about before, like attachment to the running routine, which we have, by the way. We're runners, we love running, we're addicts that need our fix. But I think it's really important to frame it in a way that this recovery and good recovery is actually going to, and the periodization of your training and proper periodization is actually going to allow you to become a better athlete. You know, we've started this on a we've went straight into it, haven't we? We didn't probably mean to do this, but
Dang, science.
yeah. But science and wisdom coupled together, or science and art coupled together, which is running in a nutshell. And I think, in my experience, yeah, people really don't respect the recovery period post marathon. And it's not a gripe of mine. It's just like, I think if more people really respected it, more people would be running better. And the way I frame it in my brain, just like I mentioned on the taper, this is essential for me to run fast. Proper recovery is essential for me to actually become a better athlete. As opposed to just running and being so fixated on just getting my runs done for the sake of getting them done. And that would have been me in the past. I've made that mistake in the past, and I've been that person with that mindset. But when you reframe it in your head as like this regression almost in fitness, or I prefer a regression in conditioning as opposed to fitness, because the fitness is still there, but maybe your peak condition isn't there. And I think that's a really important point to note, is that when you're training for marathons, you want to crest the mountaintop or peak on race day and then regress again, and just allow that conditioning to deteriorate before you actually build for something else. And that's periodization in a nutshell. And that's what we talk about in running and endurance when we speak about periodization. But yeah, just want to come back to the point about recovery. And you will hear people talk about, oh, like there's not as much need for recovery because of the super shoes, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't really buy that too much. I think the distance must be respected, and the need for recovery is absolutely huge post-marathon. Mental recovery, muscular recovery, and energy recovery, which is kind of the most important, because the energy factors in the hormonal system and all the other things that have been stressed out during both the marathon training block and the marathon itself. So yeah, recovery is paramount. And I mean, there is no rules, just like in everything in running, there is no rule, but it's about, I think, respecting that period and really tuning into your body and your energy levels, and just taking it easy, you know, just relaxing and recovering properly.
One thing I would actually add to that on the point of respecting the marathon, and this is something a lot of my clients have asked me about, and I will continue to preach. I think you're right, 100%. People don't respect that post marathon recovery, but for me, I think people don't respect the marathon in the first place. Like a lot of people don't respect running races, and they'll go into what is a 42K race, having done kind of like maybe a couple of 10, 15, maybe a 20K week. And don't get me wrong, even for people like us, where like for me, for instance, a marathon is half my weekly volume on one day. That's still a lot. For you, it's an even smaller amount. Whereas for some people, and to be honest with you, probably for the majority of marathon runners, especially major marathons, we're talking about people where it's kind of 400, maybe even 500 times their weekly mileage in one hit. And then you got to respect the fact that that is like it's doing damage to people like us, and we need the recovery time. But if you're doing that as someone who maybe isn't as invested as we are, that's going to take an even bigger toll. And like, let's be honest, like a lot of people don't even do 10,000 steps a day, right? So a lot alongside my kind of 80 to 90K weeks, I'm also doing minimum 10,000 steps every day, right? So it's kind of like that's something to factor in. To me, that is volume that I think about on top of my weekly running. So I guess for what I'm getting at is for everyday runners, it's like there's an even greater need to respect that and not rush getting back into it. And I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this or not, but I feel like I'm in the mood to talk about it. But I was
Here we
listening
go.
to one of here we go. I was listening to one of Paula Radcliffe's podcasts because I'm like well behind on podcasts. So I didn't listen to anything last week because I didn't obviously go out on any scheduled runs, so I didn't have any headphones or anything. And I was catching up on her post marathon episode, and Paula Radcliffe's she's a legend. She does know what she's talking about. Obviously, she's a record world record holder. But the one thing that really got to me, and I kind of stopped and was like, "That's dangerous advice." Is she was talking about only in passing, so I won't like go into too much. But she was talking about, oh, the great thing about the marathon is you can basically eat what you want for a week. I was like, look, I know what she's getting at because obviously, like calorie expenditure during a marathon is of course high, but I was like, that's dangerous because I feel like a lot of people go towards running as a means of just, okay, I want to lose weight. I don't like running. I just want to lose weight, or I want an excuse to be able to eat what I want. And I think that's really dangerous advice because you're going to get people that go, oh, so you're telling me if I run a marathon, I can eat whatever I want for a week. And in my head, I'm just like, that is, you got to be. I know that's not her field. She obviously, I'm coming from the background of a personal trainer, but I was like, look, respect the marathon, respect the recovery time, but also respect kind of what you're putting into your body post marathon. Yes, like we enjoyed some junk food on the day and a little bit on the day after, but like you got to still be fueling your body well in that post like marathon phase because you are recovering. And yes, calories are calories, but ultimately I'd rather someone, if it was a client of mine for instance, I'd rather they transition as soon as possible over to food that is going to give them micronutrients, things they actually need to support that recovery, right? Because um again, I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying like some beers in the week like you did, Adam, but
I
as
feel
long as
targeted.
that's no,
I'm just
don't
joking.
cancel me, bro. But alongside that, make sure you're getting in the quality. Like, don't get me wrong, I was there having some Oreos and some Guinness flavored crisps halfway through the week, which were really good, by the way. But yeah, look, I made sure that was on top of my normal diet, which is kind of like 80, 90% whole foods, unprocessed, right? So respect that recovery, and part of that for me comes from proper hydration and proper nutrition as well, not just eating like crap for an entire week because you've run a marathon, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I agree and I disagree. Um, I,
Mm.
I, I'm actually quite like you, Luke. I mean, My diet doesn't really change. Yes, I had a few beers post marathon, so that did change the week after. However, my day to day nutrition didn't change too much. Maybe the volume of food was a little bit lower because I wasn't training, and that's just due to appetite, nothing else. Probably wasn't that much lower, to be totally honest. I just find I'm less snacky. I'm not grabbing as
Mm.
many sort of snacks between meals, but I'm still having the big meals that I'm always having, and the same general foods. Like it's much the same, but I do also like what she's saying about in the week, just to have that complete mental switch off and to say, this is my holiday, this is my break.
Mm.
I feel like that does feed into that periodization piece. And for anyone that doesn't know what we mean by periodization, just to clarify, it kind of is essentially chunking your year up into blocks or sections where maybe during certain sections of the year you're developing a certain element of your fitness or your physiology or multiple elements. Certain times of the year you're targeting maybe race or races. And then there's other times of the year when you're recovering. And when we think of it from a fitness perspective, we don't want to hold peak fitness all year we can be fit all year, but we don't want to be at peak fitness all year. And so the periodization is really the building and the peaking of your fitness. And then similarly, like I just mentioned, the regression of your conditioning post race in order for you to recover and actually uh, recover first of all, but also absorb the effort that you've did, i.e., the marathon or the race, and then you start to build things again, and that periodization is really important from our perspective as coaches. When we look at when I look at a new athlete or any athlete that I'm working with, when I look at their training, I look at their year. I don't just look at their week or their day, and I'm kind of constantly zooming out and zooming in on their year and their week, so I'm periodizing things properly. But I do like what she's saying in the week off. I mean, Paula famously took 3 weeks off post marathon.
Mhm.
She kind of structured her whole year around one marathon, and that marathon was the focal point of her year. And then similarly, when she ran that marathon, she took 2 full weeks of nothing. She actually went on holiday during that time, and then the third week she done, I think, like 3 to 4 30-minute jogs. So Paula, as you say, she was a world record holder for, I think it was 14 years in the marathon. She held that record, which is incredible. Um, yeah, like one of the best ever athletes to run the marathon was taking 3 weeks off post race. Sifan Hassan, she took like 4 months off post
Yeah,
Paris
yeah.
marathon, which is
Mhm.
mad. Now, I don't think she took 4 months of no running and no exercise, but I do think she took 8 weeks of nothing, and then she got back into some light cross training. But her coach, um, he said that when she came back to training, she was completely out of shape. And this is something that the layperson doesn't really understand that much, because I think a lot of people think that they need to be in shape all year. And when I say in shape, I mean ready to race fast or ready to run to their potential or ready to PB. You don't. In order to make those big breakthroughs in your fitness, it's really important to create some sort of periodization in your year. And the sooner that you can understand that and implement that, I think the better runner you'll be. But just to go back to the point, sorry, I've waffled on. Yeah, I kind of agree with Paula, because I think that mental break is good post marathon, and I think you should just do what feels right. You like if you've really gone monk mode and you've sacrificed a lot of things in your marathon block, which I don't advocate for, by the way, but I just know a lot of people do, because of the type of personality that they are. I think it's good to let go. I think it's good to just regress and go back to sort of some maybe less healthy habits. But it's important to know when to nip that in the bud as well, and when to kind
Mhm.
of get back into it. I personally don't believe that monk mode's very sustainable. That complete laser focus whereby everything's dialed in, and that whole like Goggins approach or whatever. I don't even know what that approach is, but I don't believe in that. I kind of believe in just a good lifestyle all year. And for me, that's the most sustainable. This is me now. This is my personality. That's more sustainable. Like
Yep.
I'm happier. I'm not experiencing these like highs and lows in my mood and just everything else. So bit of a rant there, a bit of a tangent, but I agree with you. And I think it's important to know when to nip it in the bud and not to go absolutely mad, because that's
Yep.
actually what I do. I stick to the kind of the healthy foods, and generally the healthy foods, with the exception of some. But I do also see Paula's point in that I think sometimes it's just nice to have a proper break. And for some people, that means going mad on the junk food, going mad on the beers, off the rails, and then getting back into it. But like I say, I feel like some people really struggle then to get back quote unquote on the wagon when they go off it so massively, and it's really difficult to kind of reel those habits back in. So I do think knowing yourself and knowing your personality is the most important thing here. Having that self-awareness or like emotional intelligence to just know you and know what works for you and go on with that. But just respect the recovery. That's the overarching theme. Um, because it's healthier and you'll be a better athlete. Simple
100%.
as. Yeah.
100%, yeah. I think we are on the same page with that, and I think it's all just, yeah, down to knowing yourself and what, okay, is this approach, or is one approach going to lead to kind of a complete blowout, or are you doing something that is going to be sustainable in the long term? But that being said, like, obviously respecting the recovery period, why don't you, because I guess a lot of people maybe wouldn't know how to, because a lot of people run marathons completely uncoached, right? A lot of people are doing kind of like the Nike running app, or the whatever the program is that the particular marathon has sent out. So why don't you kind of recap from end of marathon what training has been like, or even how you kind of approach getting back into training post marathon, maybe some time frames. I think that'd be super useful.
Yep, cool. Um, well, in the past, I would have really struggled during this time. You know, taking time off for me during the first few years of my running journey was really difficult because of my own insecurities. And we've talked about that in the podcast before, you know, around body image and attachment to exercise and food related issues. So previously, I just want to say that to start off, like that period of time post marathon would have been really tricky for me. Thankfully, I've really worked on that, and I'm in a great place with it all now. But first of all, it was 7 days off of absolutely zero running. I didn't even put my running shoes on. I didn't even look at my running kit. I think I didn't have my Garmin watch on for maybe 4 or 5 days either. It was just a proper break from running, and I actually really enjoyed it. I took a full week after my last marathon in 2022, but I can't remember enjoying it as much. Do you know, I was just in a really good headspace with it all this time, and like I said, the sun was shining, and got out for some morning walks, and just like that nice change to my routine was really nice. Just grabbing a cup of coffee, walk around the park in the sun, headphones on, chilling out. And then myself and Kira, we took a 20-30 minute dander in the evenings as well. So that was week one, which was also really nice because I was prepping a lot of athletes for Belfast Marathon, and that was the week after London. So it's quite a busy work week. I had quite a lot of stuff to do that I had sort of taken a bit of time off with Boston and London, and it kind of coincided nicely with a busy work week. So not having to think too much about training or running was lovely. And similarly, like I didn't even try to plan the future for running. I didn't even try to get in too deep into like what's next. It was in my mind, but I wasn't really putting stuff together. I always put a bit of a spreadsheet together, and I didn't do that. So that was great. Just relaxing, recovering, having the beers and everything else. And I thought during the week, like, I'm going to get to Saturday, Sunday here and be like, I need a run, you know, for my head. I need to get out for a run. And Saturday, Sunday came, and I was just happy to rest. Really was. Even though I felt great, like my legs felt great by Thursday when I was walking around. I wasn't even tempted to run. I was just like, no, I'm enjoying this period. Just keep resting. And got to Monday, and yeah, couldn't wait to get out for a run then after supporting in Belfast on Sunday, which was a brilliant day out. We supported Belfast Marathon Sunday, cheered the runners on, and then we headed out for my sister's birthday. We went out for a few drinks in Belfast, some food, and then a few drinks in Belfast Sunday evening. Not too much, just a couple, and then was up fresh on Monday morning, bank holiday here, so Kira was off and it was sunny. So I laced up the trainers and got out for my first run, and honestly, I felt amazing. It was a runner's high. Do you know, I can't remember the last time I had runner's high, like proper runner's high. Because I think when you're training day in, day out, and you're doing high mileage, like that feeling you just don't get because
Yeah.
you're always in like a bit of an energy deficit,
We
and
don't talk
you're
about that
never.
very much, do we? As like, I was about to use the term proper runner. I can't really do that. It's a bit controversial, but yeah, as people that are
We're
maybe
hobby
like
joggers, mate. We're just
Yeah,
hobby
yeah,
joggers.
100%. That's all it is. But no, genuinely, yeah, sorry to interject there, but I don't think for people that are doing kind of like relatively high mileage running a lot, like the runner's high is quite, it's hard to come by as opposed to someone who maybe runs kind of once, twice a week, and kind of it's almost like a novelty. You get that runner's high, and like don't get me wrong, there's runs I finish and I feel pretty good, but rarely do I go out and I'm like, man, I'm floating, I'm full of endorphins, I'm
Yep,
just like mad
that's
happy. It's
exactly
always
how
like,
I would describe it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so
Floating, full of it. That's how I felt.
I'm happy for you to have that, because it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling, to be honest.
Yeah. And I could feel my legs getting tired, and I was like, oh, I just want this to keep going, you know? And I
Yeah.
still had the feeling, but my legs were fatigued. I could feel like my quads and stuff still very tired. So I was like, yep, let's just can this pretty early. But I had a massive smile on my face. I had the tunes on. Sun was splitting the stones. It was class. So that was Monday. Um, and like I said, that was when I first became aware of like, yeah, my legs just definitely aren't recovered yet. Everything's functioning well, everything's moving well. I've got no niggles post marathon, but I just think you have to be really honest with yourself in that recovery period. And I don't know whether it's just me, but for me, anyone that I really speak to, they're like, yeah, I'm great, I'm fine. And you're like, really? Are you?
Mm.
Because I'm not, like, and maybe I personally think like I sleep really well, I eat really well, I recovered properly. So when people are like, my legs are fine, I'm just like, how? How are you absolutely fine? I don't know. Is my perception of fatigue far greater than someone else? I don't know. But I do feel like a lot of runners um, under report
Mm.
fatigue and perception of effort. In my experience, runners are typically really good at dealing with pain. Do you know? I was actually having this joke with my sister's pregnant, and I was having this joke with her after the marathon, and I was just
You
making up
gotta
a
be,
statistic.
bro. You gotta be super careful if she's pregnant. Talking about pain, man. As men,
I
we're not
will.
allowed to do that.
You're gonna like this one. So in the week post marathon, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone here, I was just winding her up saying that the last 10K of a marathon, the pain is like 10 times worse than childbirth. And I was just
Bro.
pretending like I just made it up, mate. It's just a made up stat, but it was just a winder up, and it kind of worked. So I had a laugh with that during the week. But yeah, I just want to say that it is not worse than childbirth, and childbirth is definitely the worst pain in the world. Um, but anyways, yeah, it was just a bit of fun, and I'm sorry if I've offended anyone that's pregnant or has a wife or partner that's pregnant. But what was I saying? What
Yeah,
was I saying?
just, bro. On that as well, we should advocate never make these jokes, because you'll end up in big trouble. And if you've seen that Jose Mourinho meme where he's like, I don't want to end up in big trouble. I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah,
That's what we advocate: keeping your mouth shut.
yeah, it's dangerous,
Yeah,
isn't it?
very dangerous, man. But I think we talk about like that, like knowing what your kind of
Yes,
recovery is like
yeah.
post
I
marathon.
feel
Yeah.
like I feel like another tangent. I think runners are generally pretty poor at reporting fatigue, injury, and perception of effort. So I'm very aware of that as a coach, and not with every runner, by the way. In my experience, some are sort of more accurate than others, and it depends on a whole host of factors. But generally speaking, as I said, runners are very good at dealing with pain, and so yeah, like I think a lot of people believe or report that they're fully recovered when really like they're still carrying quite a lot of fatigue. And I also think the best runners, again in my experience, are really good at reporting true levels of fatigue slash effort. Hence why like they train in the right zones all the time. They don't push too hard, and they're really good at recovering. So those qualities that can be developed, I think, are incredibly powerful for athletes to develop. And like I said, I feel the best athletes are good at that. And the best athletes, yeah, they're also good at pushing pain to the side in a race, but you also can't trick physiology. You can't like people think, oh, that guy runs really fast, so he must be an animal. Like he's a mental freak. Do you know people say that about runners and really fast runners? It's like no, they're no better at tolerating pain than you because from a physiological and Dan Nash talks about this on his podcast, the Physiology of Endurance Running, the Physiology of Endurance podcast, and how I don't know if he talks about this specifically, but he talks about how like your limiting factor isn't your ability to tolerate pain in a race. Your limiting factor is your fitness and your physiology generally. Do you know, we can all push into the upper limits of where we need to go in terms of our physiology if we're training. So the limiting factor isn't like your tolerance of pain. I personally don't believe, because as I say, I think runners are really good. Generally, people that race are really good at tolerating the pain that's sort of needed to push into those upper limits of your physiology. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I would. I'm gonna. It's gonna come full circle. I agree and I disagree. I think you're right. You can't trick physiology, and for people that are maybe more experienced runners, like 100%. I think the thing that is whole, like for people that are running like relatively fast marathons, especially like as you get into like the approaching sub elite, I think for all of these individuals you can't get to that levels unless you have unless you can break that pain barrier, and then the limiting factor becomes fitness. But I think being someone that, again, I've got a couple of running I coach a couple of runners, and I also coach a lot of personal training clients, and I think there's obviously the massive psychological part of kind of handling pain. Like we do all, like pain is pain, right? Same as spicy food. We all experience the same level of spice, but some people can handle it better, right? Some people completely like crap themselves when they have a hot sauce, whereas other people's like, yeah, I could eat this for days. It's
I
there
like
is
where
a
this analogy is going.
well, where's it going? I don't know. But yeah, basically the psychology is something that is going to stop people from getting to that limit, and I've just completely like lost my train of thought where I was going with
Sorry,
this. But
mate, I interrupted you. Yeah, I think
nah,
you,
not at
you,
all.
you mentioned around how some people, you mentioned about how better runners, sorry, better is not the right word, faster runners, because fast doesn't make you better. And that's a
Yep.
conversation for another day. It doesn't,
Hmm.
because I believe that anyone that's trying to reach their potential is elite in my eyes. But I think you said how faster runners to get to a certain level have to be. Are you back?
Yeah.
Good.
So basically, like, yeah, for these higher level runners, for the faster runners, like we know that they're going to be like mentally very very resilient. But for people that maybe aren't as experienced, like I think there are a lot of people who maybe are somewhat limited by their ability to tolerate pain and discomfort. And that's just an experience thing. I think a lot of us, especially living in Western culture, we have it pretty good, right? You'll hear this all over Instagram when it's like we live in climate controlled conditions and X, Y, and Z, and we basically have it so good we don't know what it's like to really need things, and that does ultimately decrease someone's like tolerance to discomfort and pain. So I think you're right. Ultimately, you can't cheat physiology. Like we all need the same amount of recovery. But I think the main thing I think I was trying to get at was that um, I think being able to tolerate discomfort does probably hold some people back. And how will we talk? We were linking this into recovery somewhat, and I can't like find that bridge for where we were talking about. But yeah, that's maybe just my tangent there is like I think being able to um like tolerate that to an extent, but also then recognize, okay, when am I experiencing something that's so great? So for us guys, for people that maybe are able to get to the limit of their physiological ability, because we can push past that pain barrier, it's then very hard for us to go, okay, at what point do I need to, or how long do I need to recover for, right? Because it's like unless it's kind of excruciating or to the point where our legs are so sore that we can't go upstairs, like at that point we all know, okay, I need to take a break. But for us, let's say I'm going to use myself as the analogy, like I did go for a little, I won't call it a run because it was like for me, very, very slow. I did that last Friday. So that was, I had four full complete days off of running. And on the fifth day, I was like, look, there was like maybe whispers of soreness, but for some people, they would have been like, yeah, nah. there's no way, there's no way. I just, but for me, I was like, look, I feel nothing. To me, it was a 1 out of 10 in terms of fatigue, but to someone else, that might be a 6 or 7, for instance. So I think that's where you've got to be most careful. And in hindsight, I really, like you've said, I really didn't need to go for that 30 minutes. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Do I regret going out for that 30 minutes? No, because it didn't come at a cost, and I was able to listen to my body and move at a pace that was very, very comfortable. And to be honest, it was almost like it really was shuffling. I was barely leaving the ground. But I think there is levels to it. Like, I mean, one of my followers I saw on Strava who ran Ballarat as well. He did a 5K, I potentially on the Tuesday, and I was like, that's when you cannot cheat physiology. There is no way. That's like not even 72 hours post marathon. Like, we know for a fact that even like in studies in resistance training, there's still remnants of damage at 72 hours, and this is just a normal 1 hour session. So the fact you run a marathon and you think it's I'm not having a go, I'm not attacking, but in my opinion, um, anything less than like 96 hours, 4 full days, it is just, it's pretty absurd to be running again, frankly.
Percent.
Um,
And
mm,
listen, I get it. Like, I get why people go out 48 hours after a race or 24 hours after a race, because of, like, I do understand that, just like relationship with food, and your, like, it's a complex relationship with exercise,
mhm.
or it can be a complex relationship with exercise, not for everyone. For some people, it is very much surface level, and it just is what it is. And I think that can actually be really healthy too. But, so I do get it. There's an element, like, there's a compassion and an understanding, but
Mm,
like, I was listening to the Inside Running lads talking about post marathon recovery,
mhm,
and as we know, they're really experienced guys. They've reached a really great level over their running careers, and I think Julian the Moose, he was just saying, like, how it's really a coach's responsibility. He believes, like, just to be like, and I love how just blasé he is, or just how straight to the point he is. He's proper,
he
yeah.
does
I,
not mess
I
around.
really, but I really like that. You know, I really do like it, because he just calls a spade a spade. And he just turned around. He's like, I can't even remember the way he said it, but he was just like, no. And he was effing and blind, and he was just like, that's when you just need to fucking tell somebody to wise up, and just, like, just rest. Just
Yeah.
rest. Just stop being a dickhead and rest. And, like, that's not my approach, by the way. That's not the type of coach I am. Uh, I try to have a conversation and try to really, I guess, show why it's important and explain why it's important, because I do believe that when an athlete or a person understands why they're doing something, they're much more likely to actually do it, as opposed to just being dictated to. But yeah, I like, it's just so important for so many reasons. Um, but I think we've touched on something really interesting when we talked about just what we mentioned there around, like, it's not the person that wins a race, and this might be what some people believe, because I've heard this from people, that the people that win races, or the people that are at the top, are the people that have the ability to tolerate the most pain.
Mm,
That is not true. I know that's not true. The people that win the races are the fittest individuals.
mm,
They're the ones that have a mixture of the longest training time, the most talent in many cases, because that exists within our sport, um, and the ones that have maybe trained, like I said, the longest or the smartest or whatever, the most specific for the race, or there's so many things that go into that, but they're not the people that can tolerate the most pain. I can guarantee that, absolutely. Um, Probably quite the contrary, because if you're tolerating pain when you train a lot, you're not going to improve as much as you could.
mhm.
And we know that because we understand to a degree physiology and how fitness is built. So yeah, sorry. I think it's just a really interesting conversation, actually, around, like, what will allow you to become the better runner isn't the ability to tolerate pain and increasing that threshold. Of course, with training and with, like, endurance and with all of that, your ability to maybe tolerate pain or fatigue, or whatever way you want to phrase it, is going to be better. Um, but yeah, it's not what allows you to reach your absolute potential, in my opinion. You are right. You do have to have an ability to to withstand some. And I believe firmly that runners have that ability generally. Runners that want to, probably the runners that are listening to this podcast, the runners that are listening to this podcast are most likely the people that actually want to improve. And you're not just going out to clear your head or to run because you have to, say, for your sport. Like, you're running because you want to become a better runner. And those people that have chosen to do that, like, they could have chose any sport, they could have chose any discipline. And I think those individuals have that ability ingrained in them. Even if you don't feel like you're one of those people in your own head, you most likely are, you know. And then it becomes like, how far can you push your fitness? How far can you push your physiology to get the most out of your body? Not necessarily your mind.
Yeah, 100%. And just to like kind of touch on a point you was making a couple of minutes ago is, and this is something that I got wrong because a lot of my training ended up being like how this was before I was coach, and I've learned, obviously I've learned a lot from yourself, Adam, but also my coach David, I've learned a lot from, and a lot of that comes down to you don't need to be busting your balls every single training session. Like, yes, they're workouts, yes, they're hard, but they shouldn't feel like max 100% efforts. And to be honest, a lot of my training going towards kind of the back end of last year did end up, it was getting to the point where the only way I thought I could progress was by going, okay, how do I add that intensity? How do I keep building on intensity? Because that in my head was what I understood based on what I know about kind of resistance training and that side of physiology. But for running, I now know it's like, no, it's okay. We need to get as much volume in as can be recovered from and sprinkle in intensity just enough to be able to adapt. And as soon as you start kind of going too hard, it's like all of a sudden you can't adapt to the training. So it's like you're literally just spinning the wheels. And at that point, like, the only way it's going to feel like you're going faster is if you're actually pushing that relative intensity. And that's not adapting. That's literally just pushing harder and driving yourself into the ground. So that's a really good thing. And just to kind of put a nice ribbon on this one, for any runners out there who are kind of self-coached, like, don't think that every run you need to finish it like feeling like, yeah, you've gone 100%, because that's not. And to be honest, the thing I tell people the most especially when they're new to running, is you should feel like you've finished a run and you can go more. That tells me that you've done, in most cases, obviously you don't want to feel like it was a walk in the park every time, but if you're like, yeah, that was a challenge, but I feel like I had a little bit more to give, that's probably a good sign. It's just a kind of a rough rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Um,
And there is times
mm,
when you should feel like it's a walk in the park. You know, that
mhm.
many times, in fact, that it should feel like it's a walk in the park. I kind of would say that sometimes you should come home from a run feeling like you could do double of that. Like, when you come home from an easy jog, if it's an hour, if it's 45 minutes, you should feel like you could very easily go and do another 60 minutes or another 45 minutes. Last point that I want to make, sorry, on that, just in terms of training and sustainable training and its importance, and sort of, I speak to a lot of athletes and a lot of people that want to improve. And when I dig a little bit deeper into, and I see this a lot, this is like anecdotally in my experience, um, when I dig a little bit deeper into what has gone wrong for people and maybe where they feel like they need support, and seen this a lot actually over the last few weeks, and people that fall off the wagon in terms of their running, sometimes they think it's accountability, like they need a coach like in their ear. But then what I've found is that when you go a little bit deeper than surface level, what I have found quite a lot is their training intensity is just all off. It's just all off. Like, they're training too hard too often. And because that training is too hard too often, you get to a certain point and you just go, I can't do this anymore. You
Mhm.
know, and without mentioning the name of certain running apps, I found that quite a lot with said running apps. And I'm not the type, I don't want to sit here and be like, they're terrible, don't use them. They're not. Like, there's a time and a place, and like affordability comes into everything else. Like, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I have found that a lot. And you get to a point where you crack, you know. It's like throwing loads of eggs at the wall and seeing which one doesn't break, and that doesn't work in this sport. And yeah, I've seen it a lot whereby you get to a point and you just can't do it anymore because the training is just too hard. You're constantly chasing splits as opposed to like them coming to you, and you just give up and you fall off the wagon. And yeah, I've just experienced that a lot, and it's because the training TID training intensity distribution is all out of whack, um, and it's not conducive to good adaptations. It's not conducive to building fitness. It's conducive to kind of breaking you down mentally and physically, and
Mhm.
as soon as you get that person into the right training routine and a training structure that really works for them and actually builds fitness gradually and actually hits the right energy systems and the right training zones, all of a sudden the training becomes one, a lot more sustainable, two, a lot more enjoyable, and they can be consistent. And if you can be consistent, you'll improve. And the penny drops. And I think that's happened for you, mate. Do you know, I feel like um, your mindset almost got you through the training that you were doing, but you very quickly realized, and thankfully you did, because you enjoy the sport and you love the sport and you want to improve, but you realized that what you were doing was unsustainable.
Mhm.
And when you made a change, you enjoy it a lot more. You don't
Yeah,
dread the sessions, and the intensity of your training or the distribution of your training is far more balanced and far more beneficial for you. And you're actually making the improvements and you're enjoying it. And like now you can see a pathway to be running for years, and that's how you that's how you become a faster runner.
yeah. No, I think you were literally again. I didn't use an app, but I was kind of I misinterpreted the training that I was doing that because that this kind of training did take me a hell of a long way. Like I'm very grateful that that style of training took me to a sub kind of 90 minute. It took me an 85-minute half marathon. So it's not like it's ineffective, but then exactly like you said, I knew something was wrong when I was like in this kind of marathon training mode, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm getting driven into the ground. Something's not right. I need to speak to someone who is more qualified. And exactly as you said, my training was dialed back in terms of intensity a lot. It was a lot more structured, and I. You're exactly right. I began to love it again. It's not that I didn't love it, but you're right. I think I was exactly what I was telling you guys not to do. I was basically because I like to see myself as like quite a high ability to tolerate pain. Like I reckon I can probably suffer more than most people. Unless you're kind of giving birth, I can't suffer more than
Because
you. You
it's
guys are
because
you
you're
guys are gone.
it's because you're well hard, mate.
It's no, it's because I'm built different, brother. But but look, that being built different aside, like I was like, yeah, nah, this isn't it. And then like I love my training now. I look forward to like almost all of my sessions. Obviously, we all have bad days, and sometimes going out for those easy runs isn't always that easy, as we've spoken about. But since my training has been uh, kind of structured and managed for intensity, it's best thing in the world, man. Like running really does become like just you do have
What
those
it should
days.
be.
Yeah, what it should be, man. Which is a passion. It's a love. I'm not just doing it to kind of to get PBs or kind of get results in races. I'm doing it because I love it, and then that's the icing on the cake. Or I actually said icing on the cherry last week. I got my
You did, mate.
cliches. I got my cliches mixed up, and one of my friends and listeners called me out on it. So Scott, I've rectified there. So yeah, but
It's all right, mate.
look,
We got the gist.
you got the gist. I'm glad, thankfully. But yeah, look, I feel like we've chatted about
We
kind
have.
of that enough now. But what about just because we're kind of getting towards the end of the time we have? What about kind of goal setting? What's your approach? How do you normally manage that? Because I think again, I was listening. Paula brought it up in her podcast. I forget the name of the podcast. I think it's like Paula's marathon something. Whoops, I
Yeah, I
forgot.
actually
Sorry.
listened. I can't remember the name of it either, but I listened to a couple of them. They're quite good for all runners because
Mhm.
yeah, they kind of cater for all, which is quite nice.
But yeah,
Can't
she
remember.
she was talking with the co-host about like whether or not you should have stuff planned post marathon. And again, I think I'm like you're talking to someone that last week in my downtime post marathon, I literally booked 4 races in 4 months prior to the Melbourne Marathon because I was on such a race high, and I don't regret that. That wasn't a it was impulsive, but it was something that I kind of already had in the back of my head that I did want to race, and I just kind of made it happen. But I think it's for me at least. Now I'll let you kind of give your 2 cents on it. Is I think for a lot of people having that race books or having something like that is really nice because as much as I could take away all the races and just keep running for fun, and I would keep running for fun, it gives you it gives you a focal point to stay anchored. You need that macroscopic goal, and then you can like structure things a bit better. It gives you something just really nice to work towards. But um, I don't think there's necessarily always a rush to have that. And like you were saying, some pros might not do anything. They'll go on holiday, not have to worry about training. But I think it's really for me at least, it comes down to like if the thought of running another marathon or another race post marathon is just like too much, then don't feel obliged to go and do any planned training like you've done in this last week, Adam. Just kind of enjoy some steady runs, enjoy some just get that runner's high, go and move your body. Do that for a couple of weeks, do that for a month even. And then if that desire to race comes back, that's when you can worry about it. But I'd say don't rush it. But then vice versa, if you're someone that's like, look, I want to get some races booked in, I want to start working towards something, like, why not? Honestly, why not? That's at least how I kind of see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I think what's really important here is to be the most important thing, should I say, is to be self-aware and like emotionally intelligent and know you and do you as opposed to what someone else says. Like I have been posting little recovery tidbits on Instagram this week and they're not blanket rules, they're just some guidance and like hopefully some of those speak to some people. That's the intention of those. You know, it's like, oh, that's something that really resonates with me. It doesn't have to resonate with everyone. Like I don't expect something that I post for someone to be like, for everyone to be like, oh yeah, that's the way. They're kind of they're structured in a certain way where I kind of want people to think about them and be like, that really hits home with me. Um, and yeah, like you said, there's no blanket rules. And sometimes, like post marathon, jumping on a Monday morning and booking your next 3 races, that's actually can be a really good thing, but it's not necessary. Like for me, I just like to take some proper mental downtime, proper recovery, mental and physical, and that means just not really thinking about races for at least a week. Not really thinking about the periodization of my year for the next week. And actually, as I said to you, I think last week, I need to get better at just planning a little bit further ahead for these bigger races because, like, if you want to run Berlin Marathon, if you want to run Valencia Marathon, if you want to run those like big city fast marathons or majors or whatever, you got to be in the hat. Like, your name has to be in the hat probably a year out. So I need to get much better at that and have those races booked because, yeah, like I want to run Valencia. You know, I want to run Berlin. Not all in the 1 year, by the way. But if anyone has a spot for Valencia, I just want to say that again. I'll happily buy it from you. Or if anyone knows of anyone that is selling a spot for Valencia Marathon this December, let me know. So, yeah, I need to get a little bit better at just planning a bit more long term with regards to marathons. And 2026, I plan on doing that. But what I have done this week is I've done out my spreadsheet, like my long term plan, and I've penciled in Dublin Marathon in October. So I think we're 23 weeks out or something from Dublin Marathon. And I've basically created up my spreadsheet and I create a bit of a periodization, quite loose to begin. So the periodization begins with the recovery period post marathon, and that will last as long as it needs to last. I won't rush to like be recovered by X date and doing this session by X date. That recovery, because I also know my body, I know my mind, I know I'm not going to take the piss with it. I don't want to recover for 5 weeks. I want to recover I want to get back to training as soon as possible. So, like, if you're the type of person that needs the kick up the ass, maybe having a date to get back to training or at least a date pencil in could be a good thing. But again, like I said at the start of this, the most important thing is that self awareness and knowing you and really understanding how you operate as a person. So the recovery phase comes first, and then I want to begin some training that really looks to target improving my lactate threshold, and improving my running economy, and trying to get hopefully with the result of getting a little bit faster over the half marathon and the 10K, mainly the 10K to be honest. And then there's July holidays. Like I do want to take some July holidays where I'll probably still run, but just like lower volume, no real fixation on sessions. And then I have a bit of a bridge period where I bridge from that type of training towards marathon training, starting like start of August. And that bridge period sort of takes me into, like I said, the beginning of August. That'll be from the end of the July holidays into the start of August, sort of into start/mid August. And then I begin the marathon specific block all over again. So really I want to use about 11 weeks for my marathon specific phase. And that includes the taper, by the way. So it's really 8 weeks of good training, or 8 weeks of high volume marathon specific training, should I say. And then the taper, and then the race. Now, just want to caveat all this with that is ideal scenario. Life happens, and you have to know that, and you have to understand that, and you have to allow for that. So any time that anything comes up in my diary or my schedule, I put it into that spreadsheet. I put in like sickness, for example, that happened in my last block, trips away, just little things that might impact your training, nights out with friends, appointments, just all the little things that might just interrupt. And then what I do is I structure my week to week training based on all of that. So I'm constant, and I do this with the athletes that I work with. I'm constantly kind of looking at what's in the big picture and zooming out on a macro scale. And then I'm zooming in and sort of focusing on the micro to make sure that I'm sort of getting the most out of that block or that periodization or that period of periodization, to kind of take me to the goal in the most effective way possible, or take me to the goal in the best shape possible. It's like a process of reverse engineering. And I've just started to look at that week just gone by from kind of Monday, Tuesday. And what I also did is I input the races that stood out to me between now and then. So I've put in like 10 races. I'm not going to do 10. I might do 3 or 4. I might do 1 as a training run. But it's just the races that stand out. So then what I can do is I can look at the big picture, look at the stuff that's happening, i.e. holidays, and when the big races are, i.e. Dublin Marathon. And then I can pick the ones that kind of suit me in my life the best, as in the structure of my life and what's happening, but also that bring me to my goal in the most effective way. Which ones do I need? The other thing that I factor into this, because I'm now self-coached, is, and I try to really think about my own bias. Do you know? I think that's really important for self-coached athletes, particularly at a decent level. And this is where having maybe a mentor or someone that you can at least bounce ideas off can be really good, or even a training partner. Like I know Julian on the Inside Running podcast mentioned that he's actually training with an ex-1500 meter runner that's trying to run half marathons. And that's really good because they're coming at it from 2 different angles. Julian's a marathon runner. He's a really good marathon runner, but really like what I would call pretty much just a marathon runner. He wasn't a 10K athlete. He wasn't a half marathon. He was a marathon runner. And he's training with someone who's coming at it from the other end. And I think that can be a really beneficial relationship. And this is what I'm sort of touching on here when I talk about what's next and how I kind of think about things in my own brain for both the athletes that I coach and me. I think about my own bias from both an athlete and a coach perspective. And I try to, and this is what you're kind of taught in teaching as well, is to think about your own biases and to have strategies in place to mitigate those, lessen those, and kind of work around them. So you're getting the most from everything, and you're factoring in the things that you're biased. So let's just say, just at a really simple surface level, like your bias is that you're a really high mileage lover, you're a really high volume lover. Being aware of that and being aware that you're kind of, and then also being aware of why that is, and that there may actually be some and lots of good reason for it. But being aware of it, I think, is really important as a coach to, yeah, like I say, understand that that's not everything, and that there's a whole package to be thought about. So probably not phrasing that the right way, but being aware of that bias is something that I also try to factor in to the year and the periodization. So that's that's pretty much in a nutshell what's going on in my brain.
Yeah, no, that's I think I followed along. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I always like the idea of like reverse engineering. So have that kind of start with that macroscopic goal. In this case for you, it's Dublin, and then just kind of work back and don't be pragmatic about it, be honest about it, and kind of factor in that it's things aren't almost always aren't going to be perfect. I like that. And I also like the idea of, yeah, don't get for, and this is kind of branching off a little bit, but like you said, don't always get hung up on one way of approaching things. So obviously, like, again, both of us, I think it's safe to say that our main focus is being better marathon runners. But the races I'm doing in the run up to Melbourne, I'm going to do another 5. I want to do a 10. I want to do a couple of halves, because ultimately, if you're a better 5K, 10K half marathon runner, chances are you're going to like be looking at they're all training energy systems that are part of what it takes to run a marathon. So if you're better at those, or at least not neglecting those, you're going to be a better marathon runner as well. So it's really not being dogmatic in your one discipline and going like, okay, let's look at running from a holistic standpoint. And ultimately, if I'm better at these shorter, faster distances, my these particular energy systems are going to be trained up so that when I run my marathon, I'm going to be a better all-round runner. So it's a really good um, point to make as well. And look, hey, if you ever need help structuring your 2026, Adam, I'd love for you to come down to Melbourne, and we'll do some running together. That would
That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
and yeah, you draw
Yeah.
the draw the short straw though, because I've got a little one and I can't take you in places, so you'd have to come to me, mate. So, and it's, you know what? Actually, me
Well,
and
my
my
best
partner
mate
are.
is living in Melbourne, Um,
Is it me?
it's you, mate.
No, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, no, my best
Um,
mate's living in Richmond. He's been there for over a year now, so I definitely do want to get down there at some point. It would be lovely to be out for like, I'd love to be out in January, February, that time whenever this place is pretty dark and chilly, and Melbourne is nice and hot.
it's pretty
Um,
good. It's pretty good Jan Feb as well, because that's when it's kind
yeah,
of
lots
like
happening.
peak heat. Yeah, yeah,
Get some heat
yeah.
training in. But
Get some
then
heat. Go on.
just to sorry cap that off. Like,
Hmm.
the other things I always think about training too is like this is kind of more personal now, is like what are the overarching themes that I kind of want to think about in this period of training. And in this next period of training, like I said to you last week, I wrote it in the whiteboard and I've kept it up there, is enjoyment over everything, simplicity, and to feel it out and to trust yourself. So this recovery period, like I really need to feel it out and let it last as long as it needs to last, because I also, just to bring it back, I understand myself and I understand the type of person that I am. So feeling it out for me is really important, because I don't need to be pushed to do training. I'll I'll the type of person that I am will train too soon, if anything. So
Mm.
to feel it out and to actually trust myself to listen to the body and recover, that's more important to me. Um, so it's these overarching themes that I also like to kind of run through, and kind of that will run through my training. And then similarly, the key elements of the training that I want to include at various stages. So in the recovery phase, there's certain elements that I want to include in the training. And it's quite simple. In the threshold slash kind of 10K improvement phase, there's certain elements to the training that I really want to focus on. And similarly then, in the marathon phase, there's certain elements that I really want to focus on, and fun is also going to be intertwined there, and enjoyment. But and then like writing the training plan again, if you understand training and you understand like physiology, writing the actual training plan is so easy. But it's like all of that thought is sort of running right through it, and suppose that's to get a sort of a bit of an insight into my coaching philosophy without even talking about training, because for me, coaching and running is so much more than just the training that you write. The training that you
Mm.
write is like so surface level. It's like the picture of the iceberg and the water underneath, and you can see how much of it's underwater, and like that relates to coaching so heavily. It's like the tip of the iceberg is the training, and like everything else that goes below it is what is below the surface, that like someone looking at your Strava just can't see.
Mhm.
Do you know? And that's that's why Strava is, whilst I love it and I think it's brilliant because it's almost like social media for runners and it's a great way to sort of share and connect with people. It's also why it's really harmful because it doesn't paint the whole picture. Do you know? And
Mhm.
just looking at someone's training on Strava, which I used to do. I used to love sort of looking at what elites were doing and what really much better athletes than I and people that I aspired to were doing. It just doesn't paint the picture at all. It paints like the 5% at the top. Do you know?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I was literally going to use the same analogy. Strava is basically Instagram for running or cycling. But yeah, really good point there. But we've been recording for a little while, and to be honest, we haven't really done any recaps. Not that there's a heap to recap, but I actually think this has been probably quite a bit more valuable in terms of what we've been spitting straight facts. But before we wrap up, like, have you got plans for the weekend? What's happening for the week ahead? Are we taking it
We're
easy still?
off. We're off to the Ulster final tomorrow, which is the Gaelic football. We're off to see Armagh take on Donegal tomorrow in Clones, which is a bit of a pilgrimage. It's about an hour and 10 minutes away, but on Ulster final day, it's a lot longer. Pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and it's a really small, tiny town that just comes to life when there's a big championship game like this weekend. So we're off there tomorrow. We'll pack the picnic. Um, I think I'm finished with the pints, to be honest. So normally, it's full of beer. It's a brilliant day out. Like it's full of beer gardens. The sun will be shining. The match isn't until it's actually in the early evening tomorrow. So like the pubs will be packed. But
Yeah.
I think I'm done. I might have a couple. We'll see. So
Yeah, to be
that's
honest,
actually tomorrow.
your face there, you look like a man who's seen maybe a couple too many beers this week.
Do you know what, mate? I really yeah, people probably think I've taken it much heavier than I have. But anyway, that's tomorrow. The Giro d'Italia starts today, so
Sure
that's
does,
always
yeah.
good. I love just because I'm now working from home, like having that on in the background is I just love the cycling and love the cycling season. So that starts today. Really looking forward to that. Yeah, some life admin bits as well, just bits and pieces that have been brushed to the side that need sorted. Over the next few days and week. But apart from that, no. But I'm really looking forward to the match tomorrow. Like I said, it's given a good day, and Clonus is a cracking spot when the sun's shining. So that's it. What about you, mate?
Yeah, to be honest, like I know we've got a different Mother's Day, so it's Mother's Day this weekend, so we'll spend some quality time with my missus, who I've got to know really, really well in the time I've spent off from running last week or the week before last. So no, because I know
What's she
she
like? Is
actually
she nice?
she's really funny actually. She said a joke and it was so good I wrote it on the fridge. um No, that she will listen to this and she'll kick my ass. So I love you,
Yeah.
Nicole. But yeah,
You getting the
look,
wooden spoon, mate?
yeah, man, bad. But yeah, we'll spend the day together tomorrow because then we'll go and see her mum on Sunday. And although some of us support a football team that's now won the league and don't have to worry about any more remaining matches, that's not all of us. So I've got a lot of Chelsea have got some pretty important matches coming up over the
I do.
next week. Realistically, it's probably the next 2.5 weeks now. So that's going to be my main source of stress, which is great. But yeah, aside from that, just looking forward to continuing building up some training. And yeah, to be honest, just I think I'm in a good place with life at the moment. I've had some good weeks. So I'm just happy to tackle things as they come. Yeah, nothing overly exciting.
Good.
So yeah, man,
I'm glad to
no
hear it.
complaints from
Good
me.
stuff. Good. Well,
Um,
listen, have a lovely weekend, mate. And if you're listening on Wednesday, hope you have a lovely Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And yeah, take care, mate. But I'll let you do your thing.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna do the outro. I was like, oh,
No, mate.
how
I'll leave that.
exciting!
I'll leave that to you.
Well, on that nearly bombshell, I just want to say, as always, Thank you so much, as Adam said, for watching, listening, subscribing, following, liking, all of that good stuff. And again, if any of you guys can spare not even 2 minutes, maybe 30 seconds to share your listening experiences of us, it means the world. But otherwise, as long as you keep enjoying, that means plenty to us. So yeah, we wish you good luck in your training for the week ahead, or good luck in your recovery if you've been running races. And we are looking forward to chatting with you guys again soon. Thank you and take care.